welcome to the new current gen podcast. This one is called What Are You Playing? Hosted by me, Derek, and I've got a special guest. You might know him if you listen to the current gen podcast, and I've podcasted with him for what, 7, 8 years, and
Yeah,
that's
man.
Tim. How you doing, Tim?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me on, my friend. I'm excited for this show. I like the
Yeah.
focused format you're going for.
Yeah. So actually, let's do that. Let's before we just like jump into the show, let me kind of explain to the audience or listeners what this show's supposed to be. So it's going to be a second gaming podcast for current gen. So it's going to be under the current gen umbrella. And I'm titling it "What Are You Playing?" It's based off the Resident Evil 4 merchant, who's actually my favorite non-playable character in all video games. So I thought it was a good idea because that's what this podcast is all about. It's all about we're gonna cover new releases, but it's all about whatever the people that are on the podcast are playing. We're gonna have deep dive discussions on those games. So it could be new releases. It could be something that you were playing that's 5 years old, but you're really into it and you want to talk about it. That's the other part of this show that should make it a little bit different than current gen, and that is, I'm probably going to be the only consistent person on the show. We're going to rotate people in and out. So it could be other guys from the Current Gen podcast. It could be people from the Facebook group. I have a couple of guys coming on to the next show I'm planning on having that are not part of Current Gen at all. I mean, as far as Current Gen, the podcast. So that's the goal, is just to bring in people, listeners, and, as long as I can have a conversation with you, and let's dive deep into whatever you're playing, and then most of the time, whatever new releases there
Yeah.
are. So with this one, by the way, we were planning on having Kyle. I don't know if he's jumping in. Hopefully he can.
Yep.
But I wanted to pull Kyle and Tim from the Current Gen podcast, kind of jump into this. And right now, the heavy hitter, and I know you guys are talking about it on your podcast. I chose not to listen to your podcast because I wanted to go into this conversation not knowing your thoughts about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth at all. That's the
Mhm.
big hitter that came out. I've been playing it a lot. I'll talk about me in a second, but Tim, what are your and even if you're repeating yourself, what are your thoughts on Well, let's start with this. What are your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII, the original game? Did you
Okay.
play it? Did you beat it? How many times did you beat it if you beat it? And what are your like overall thoughts?
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII. I probably completed it, not a ton compared to real fans out there.
Yeah, you're a
Um,
fake fan. Got it.
Probably 3 times total over the years. I didn't get a PS1 till a couple years after it released, so I was late to the game anyway. And then I remember replaying it again on the PS2, and then I replayed it. I want to say it was the PSP, one of the Sony handhelds. I remember playing the PS1 Classic version of it on there too.
Okay.
But the time I spent the first playthrough, and then I also my buddy had his own save on his version, and so we would play his playthrough too. So it feels like I played it through more than 3 times. We would download game facts guides and look up how to find the most secret summons and get the golden chocobo to get Knights of the Round. And I don't remember all the details. I might even have even said
Yeah.
that stuff wrong, but I just remember doing all that stuff and loving it. There were very few games that I was willing to like spend we're talking dozens of extra hours on, and this was one of them. So this game was so impactful for me. I remember I had a scratched version of one disc so that the FMV sequences kept skipping for me, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until I got a better copy I finally got to watch them, and I was just floored, man. The FMV sequences, the backgrounds, the characters themselves back then I thought looked fine. They looked normal. I know now they look
Yeah,
dated.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
backgrounds I always thought looked really cool with the steam and like just the
Mm-hmm.
lighting. It just looked really, really nice. So to me, it was like one of the best looking, best playing games I had ever played. And I loved the materia system too. Yeah.
So
Great, great,
you're you're a huge fan. Okay.
big fan.
So I've shared this before in the Current Gen podcast, but I'll just share it again now that it's, this new show, but just make it a quicker version of it. So I bought Final Fantasy VII on my PS1. I was a big PlayStation fan. I got the PS1 on day one, or I think day one, as soon as I had the ability to get it. Um, but I got Final Fantasy VII with my birthday money, so I don't know if I got it on launch or whatever. But I got it with my birthday money because my cousin who played all the SNES like RPGs, which I would watch him or play some of them, like Secret of Mana, which was co-op. So I was like, oh, this was cool. He
Yeah,
had
that game's
talked me
fun.
into it. He had told me how great this game is. But keep in mind, I was ignorant of what he was even talking about. Like, I didn't
Mm.
even know Final Fantasy VII was turn-based. So, again, imagine somebody who's kind of young, doesn't have a lot of money.
Yep.
This is my money, and I go
Mhm.
and buy this game. And I remember when I booted it up, I know a lot of people talk about how it was ahead of its time with the graphics, like as far as like the movies and all that stuff.
Yep.
I don't remember that being my reaction at all. I remember my reaction being complete and utter disappointment because I was like, what the hell is this game? Because I didn't play turn-based RPGs back then. So I was like,
Yeah,
this is dumb. I essentially
I get
was
it.
screwed by my cousin who probably knew probably had a general idea that I wasn't going to like it, but he was such a fanboy, he wanted it. So he talked me into it and coerced me into getting it. Um, that being said, I have not actually ever beaten Final Fantasy VII. I do have a playthrough. I just downloaded it on PS5. I do have a playthrough on PS5. I'm not going to say halfway through, probably 35%, 40%
Okay.
through.
Yeah.
So I would like to beat it. I understand that I could technically say I beat Final Fantasy VII if I beat this trilogy of remakes because it is semi the same story, but it's completely different game. So I do want to that is a game I want to check off the hey, I beat this game because
Yeah.
I do think it is a great game, but definitely was
Combat
not.
system is good once you get over the turn-based stuff. And by the way, you aren't alone. I played Final Fantasy VI, was my first turn-based game
Hmm.
before Pokemon, before Chrono Trigger, before Suikoden, before I knew what turn-based meant.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, "This is really dumb." I hit a button and I don't swing my sword. I have to wait for my little guy to move, and like, I don't like this, man. So you weren't alone. Like that was my first experience wasn't super positive either. And of course, I ended up loving that game and loving all the other
And my
turn-based.
opinion of turn-based is obviously completely changed.
Yep. Yep.
So it's not something that I would hold against it where I'm like, this game's dated, has terrible combat, turn-based, I want action. No, I do love, and we'll talk about it, Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth's combat,
Hmm.
but I do love turn-based games
Me
now.
too.
So that's where I stand with that game. So the reason I asked you that is kind of set it up for now. Let's shift into remake real quick.
Yeah.
We don't have to hang on it forever. You probably do remember on the podcast, I was not a huge fan of remake when it came out.
Right.
Not that I hated it. It was always just kind of while you guys praised it, I was like, I don't get it. I don't get the praise. And part of that was again, it was another combat issue, and that is it was action, but there was still a lot of
But not
strategy. Like
really. Yeah.
you couldn't go into a boss fight. You could fight other enemies fine just playing it as an action game, but you couldn't go into several of the boss fights and just swing your sword. Like you
Right.
had to play defensive,
Yeah.
you had to use the right materia, you had
Yep.
to have a lot of times at least somewhat of a battle plan. Another
Yep.
thing the game loves for you to do is they love for you to use the assess materia, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I hate that materia because I understand the strategy and it's smart to use it, but I'm like, no, dude, I just want to swing. I want to use my special abilities. I don't want to have to assess the enemy and then go, okay, that's your weakness. Now I've just wasted an ATB bar to assess you. I already want to know up front what you are, what your weakness is, and just go in
Yep.
swinging. And that's not what the game does. The game's constantly changing enemies, so you're constantly assessing new enemies. So I was not in love with Final Fantasy VII Remake originally. I did go back and do New Game Plus, which I've said it before, and I'll say it probably a ton of times if you listen to the show consistently, is I always enjoy games for the most part more the second time. I know there are people that are
Yeah.
just one and done. They
Crazy,
play
but I
it, they
get it.
enjoy the experience.
Hmm.
I always figure out things more, and I'm more of a power trip gamer where it's like once I become OP and it's because I figured you out, not just turned you
Okay.
down to easy, but figured you
Yeah.
out and I become an OP player, I enjoy the games more. Plus I usually like I already know the story, So
Yeah.
there's always things I miss. Yes, part of it is because it's like, oh, you're talking, skip, skip, skip. But it's also because I'll just admit it, I'm not stupid. I'm a smart guy, but I don't always pick up on things. Like there's so
Mm.
much being thrown at me the first time I play a game when it comes to gameplay, story, characters, all that stuff, I miss a ton. So when I go back and play a game a second and third time, it's almost like a new experience, even though I do know the basics of it. And then I pick up on things and I'm like, holy crap, I totally missed that.
Mm.
Or now that's making sense. I can connect these characters to this story arc or whatever. So
Mm.
Remake became a completely different game. I even went
Mm.
back because I save all my stuff and changed my review score. I think I originally gave it an 8 out of 10. I bumped it to a 9.5 because
Yeah.
I was like, this game's phenomenal.
Excellent.
Um,
Just out of
so
curiosity, because I think I knock it down somewhere between a half and a whole point. I'm not sure if I give it a 9, 9.5. But what do you knock it for? Like, what are the little things that just don't quite deliver for you with that with Remake? Real quick before we talk about Rebirth.
Okay, so for Remake, I don't have a problem with the linearity. I love the
Same.
combat. That's what I
Yep.
got good at.
Yep.
I would say this is just a personal subjective thing. It's nothing objective that they did wrong. I'm just not in love with like some of the like story and characters in the Final Fantasy VII game. Since 16 is probably my favorite game, and it makes sense with my personality because it's the darker, more serious tone.
It is.
Whereas
Yeah.
7 and probably some of the other Final Fantasies have a lot of goofy characters, a lot of goofy dialogue, and I'll talk about it more in Rebirth, but like that sometimes is a miss for me. But
Yeah.
other than that, I hate like I won't say I hate giving perfect tens because I feel like last year all I was doing was like this is the greatest game I ever played. 10,
Last
10,
year was a
10, 10.
unique year, though.
Yeah, I literally had 3 games that I gave a 10 to
And
that
they
are worthy of greatest
deserved
games
it.
of all time for me personally.
Yes.
So I hate just shelling out tens because people don't take me serious already because I'm very exaggerate. I exaggerate a lot of things I say, but for me, that's the only thing I can dock it
Trash.
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the only thing I can dock it for, and I don't even feel like that's like I could give it a 10. It wouldn't
So
bother
for me,
me
it's
if
a
I
little
gave it
more
a
about
10.
the side quests and the backtracking and
Oh
just
yeah, yeah.
I didn't mind the linearity, but I did think just the overall design of getting from point A to point B and then going back to point A again if you needed to or wanted to. I didn't think that was super intuitive, or I guess maybe intuitive is the wrong word, smooth or user friendly. So it was that
Yeah.
kind of experience that just detracted from it for me personally a little bit. But for me, the story and characters, I already loved those because I'm a fan of the old game. So whatever things were there that might turn off others a little bit, I was all in because I love these characters and worlds so much already. I
Yeah.
think that's nostalgia plays a role for sure.
So you loved it from the get-go. You never went
Yeah.
back and played it again though, right? You were one and done, you're
I
good.
fired it up on the Steam Deck when I wanted to see how it played on the Steam Deck. So I
Okay.
played through like that first boss, up till you meet a couple important characters. But
How did it
I
run on deck?
pretty well. It drains the battery real fast. So I didn't get the OLED deck. I'm tempted to, but then I'm like, I don't need this. I don't need this. But yeah, the battery life on the Steam Deck, if you're playing
Tim,
a
that's where
heavy
you use your kids as an excuse
game.
and you hand it down, which
Yeah.
then justifies the
And you get
purchase
your
of
that's
the,
what I did with the
you know,
Switch OLED, but I'm like, I don't know how many more times I can do this. But anyway, all that to say,
before the wife goes, no,
I know.
I know your
It
strategy.
it plays great. Just drains the battery super fast, and it looks wonderful. So, but anyway, I did not play the Intergrade DLC,
I was
although I
gonna ask
did.
that next
Yeah,
if
I did.
you
I did
played it.
kind of read a overview of what it's about and how it kind of explains Yuffie's side of things because this is a new story for her. This is not in the original game. Like the
Yeah.
DLC is something that's brand new, has new characters,
Gives
new
her
way to introduce.
depth.
So
Gives her good depth. I did play it. I played it. Was it last year? Oh, it had to be last year. We're in the beginning of this year,
you
and I
did
definitely did play.
a full replay and the
Yeah,
DLC.
I played Remake, New Game Plus, and then went straight into the DLC, and then played Crisis Core. So I Final Fantasied it up last year.
Dang, yeah.
Um, I really like the DLC. Yuffie, like when you first, this is for me, when you're first introduced to her, you're like, please shut up. You are a terrible character. But as I played through the DLC, it kind of, and this, you'll see a shift in what I just said I didn't particularly like about Remake
Mhm.
to the Yuffie DLC to even now Rebirth, and that is I find myself smirking a lot at the stupidity, or not stupidity, just ridiculousness of some of the characters, some of the lines, some of
Mhm.
the things the games have you do. For instance, one of the worst parts for me, I know people like it in Remake, is dressing up as a girl and
Dance.
doing like dancing and stuff. I'm like, dude,
It's like a
I
rhythm game.
that's
Yeah.
everything I hate about gaming. Like I hate rhythm games. I will play anything else before I play a rhythm game. So that part in
Uh,
particular, like that's worthy for me personally of docking it point 0.5 right there. So yeah, no longer a
I
10.
I hear
Just
you.
made that
Yeah.
decision.
That part
But
didn't bother me. I like rhythm games just fine, but I know what you're saying. I know why
yeah,
some people wouldn't like that. I get it.
but the Yuffie DLC was really, really good. I
Was
really, really enjoyed that. And I was shocked. The big thing that I liked though, and we get it more of it in Rebirth, is the combat change. So
the
I
synergy
already
stuff.
began to love the remake combat, but
Yeah.
then now they add this new synergy ability with
Uh-huh.
your, I forgot his name, but the other character in Yuffie's DLC that
Is it
becomes
like
like,
Cage or something? I don't know. I forget his
I
name.
don't remember his name, which we could totally Google, but I'm talking, so I can't do 12 things at once. But he's another character they kind of bring in to give her character more depth, more story. And I thought they handled it very well. I would highly recommend it. If you get in the mood after Rebirth and you're like, I want to play more Final Fantasy VII, but I don't want to do a whole playthrough. I think it took me like 5 to 7 hours, so it doesn't overstay its welcome.
I don't know why I
And
thought Cage. Is it Sonon?
Sona.
Sonon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I remember thinking his name was like Sora or something like that from Kingdom
Okay.
Hearts. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so he's a good character. Um, and I like how it kind of takes Yuffie's DLC and ties it into Rebirth. They do a really good job of doing that. So, I really enjoyed that. And then I played Crisis Core, which I'm so glad I played Crisis Core. Did you ever play the original Crisis Core or the remake of it?
No, I never played them. I might have tried them, but I never really got into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
another thing. I won't harp on it too much because I do want to move into Rebirth, but like it's another thing that actually, as I played it and beat it, I remember saying my initial reaction was, I'm so glad I played this because this is gonna change for me how I experience Rebirth.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
even if
I get it.
somebody's like, I don't want to play through the game, that's fine. I'm not one of those sticklers that's like, you gotta go, you gotta play it, you gotta play. There's YouTube, guys.
Yeah.
Go on YouTube.
Summaries.
You can find somebody who summarizes the story really good. I did enjoy the gameplay. It is dated, even if you play the remake or not the remake, remaster of it, which I played. So it looks a little bit better visually, but yeah, the gameplay, while it's fine-tuned, it's definitely better than the PSP version, which I did play half the story on the PSP back in the
Yeah.
day.
And you can fast
Um,
forward now, right? So you can move everything really fast, which is nice. Isn't there a fast forward feature in the
if
remaster?
there is, I may have not used it. I
I
don't
think you can.
remember
I think you.
using
I could be wrong. I could have sworn there was a fast forward feature.
because it's not turn-based, so I don't remember. Oh no, there's a speed up. So like when you're exploring the world, you can, I think, walk faster. I did use that if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But the combat, I don't think I sped that up at all because it's pretty similar to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Different, but it's still similar. It has the materia system, has all that. But the reason I liked it is it gives depth to now what I'm going to experience in Rebirth with Zach. So Zach's, spoilers. I don't really consider this a spoiler. So if you whine, you just are completely ignorant of Final Fantasy VII, and you shouldn't be on watching this show, anyways. Way to get listeners right there. But
I actually lost you there for a minute. So whatever it is you said, you can redo it if you want
yeah.
to. Because I don't
Oh,
think
I
the
was going.
recording picked up like the last 30 seconds or 20 seconds.
All right. Well, I'll just say this that I liked Crisis Core because it gave me a brand new way of experiencing Rebirth because
Okay.
Zack is
Yeah.
rest in peace. But in Rebirth, he keeps in all the trailers and stuff, he keeps showing up.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that with remake that I really appreciate it. Again, maybe you have a different view or appreciation, but I experienced the full story of Seven. I know what it is. I know the story. I know
Yeah.
everything that happens. But seeing the changes in remake story wise and the way they
Yeah.
leave it open, especially with the ending where they're like, hey, anything can happen in the next
Yeah.
two
They make
parts.
it really clear,
R-
like we're basically changing our fate, and you're like, you're what now? So like it's
yes,
clearly a deviation. Absolutely.
correct. So now that makes you go, okay, I know Zach's original story. What's his
Mhm.
story going to be in Rebirth slash whatever? I'm predicting the third one's going to be called Revelation or Revelations. Um, but I'm curious where he shows up, which leads us into let's talk Rebirth. Okay,
Yeah.
so before we just jump into like, hey, do you like the game? I imagine your answer is yes. First,
Eh,
give me some details. How far are you into it?
yeah.
Like hours wise, and what chapter are you in?
Hours wise, I think I'm at the 5 or 6 hour mark.
Okay.
So I haven't had as much time to play it as I would like. Um, I think I mean, I've been doing, here's the problem. When a game has a bunch of interesting icons on the screen, not any old icons, but interesting
Yeah.
ones, it's gonna
Yeah.
distract me. So I am still in chapter 2. I think I'm at the point where if I can,
Grasslands.
yeah, if it's on the grasslands, if I continue, it's gonna move me into chapter 3. I think there's gonna be some sort of boss encounter. So I think I'm at that point, but I am just doing all the open stuff for Chadley. I did all the Chadley battle stuff, which I recommend, by the way. It gives you a bunch of free materia,
Yeah.
which is awesome. So yeah, that's where I am in the game so far.
Okay. So what's your overall thoughts on everything? So let's start with how much do you like it and what do you like? And is there any part of it that you don't like in your experience so far?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it. I feel like it's an upgrade on Remake in pretty much every way, and I liked Remake a lot already. Um, so I think visually it's absolutely stunning, thanks to the power of the SSD on the PS5 that could not be played anywhere else.
Heck yeah.
Um,
Can't play it on Xbox Series X. It doesn't
you
work.
can definitely couldn't play it anywhere else. Anyway, definitely couldn't play on the Switch, and I'm not being facetious about that. You couldn't, but
Yeah.
it is a gorgeous game. I'm playing on graphics mode, and I'm not sure if that means my frame. I hadn't researched it. Is the frame rate at 30, locked to 30? I'm not sure what it's at, but
Yeah.
I'm finding that to be a, for me at least, plenty smooth experience, and it looks really nice on my TV. So
Did you even try it on performance?
I did, and the draw distance wasn't as good, and there were a couple moments where like I wouldn't call it pop in, but certainly the textures took a second to load in some areas. Like it would be flat, and then all of
Oh
a
yeah.
sudden you would. So like, I didn't like performance mode as much. I think I did notice some smoothness when you rotate the camera, or maybe during a battle. But I just left it on graphics. I was like, I'm doing fine uh, with graphics mode. I just think it looks really pretty. The Grasslands is a particularly nice looking area. Calm is a really cool city. I'm noticing it feels like a living city. People are moving, people are
Yeah.
talking. You can hear voices. Like there's so many not just RPGs, but open world games with a town, and the NPCs are just kind of like standing in their same spot. They might as well be T-posing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in this one, they're moving, they're carrying boxes, they're buying stuff from each other, they're arguing, they're having a drink. So it just feels alive. Square did a really good job with the city. They did in remake too, but this is a step up, I think. So
Oh,
I
it's
really
definitely a
love the
step up.
visuals, the world. I feel like I'm there. So far, I'm really, really liking how they're pulling me in with the side quests as well, with what Chadley wants you to do, with investigating things, with helping the guy at the farm, with how you trigger battles. Like I'm just really, really into it. I dig the setup so far. I love exploring too. I mean, you know me. I love Zelda. I love Elden Ring. I love checking every corner and like, oh, let's go check out that little structure.
Yeah.
And they reward you in this game for checking it out. So I love that.
That was there's a couple of things that I was thinking as you were talking. One, and I know this is going to sound stupid because Kingdom Hearts exists, but I feel like I thought this multiple times as I was playing Rebirth. I was like, I feel like I'm in a Walt Disney video game. Like there's vibes that
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth pulls. I'm talking the way they suck you in with not only the world and the art, but also the like music as you're
Dude.
exploring that world.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
was several times where I was like, dude, I feel like I'm in a Disney movie or a Disney
Yeah.
game. And I really liked it. And like I said, I was like, well, that's kind of stupid to say, Derek. Kingdom Hearts exists, and it's literally Square Enix Disney RPG, but this gave me that same vibe just without the
Yep.
Disney character. So
Yep.
I
I
definitely
agree.
like that. And then the other thing while I was playing it, I can't tell you why, I just felt it. So this is completely feelings based, but I was like, I feel like this experience is feels very close to how I felt when I was playing Breath of the Wild, especially when I was in Greenlands. Just the
Yeah.
exploring and going and checking every nook and cranny and the
Mhm.
excitement of what you uncover,
Yep.
and then even like unlocking those like whatever nodes or whatever that
The
oh,
little towers.
yeah, those little towers and things like that kind of
And
took
then
me
you see
back
more
to,
icons pop up. You're like,
yes,
okay,
took
a
me
new
back
life
to what I
spring.
was doing at Breath of the Wild. And I get it. Other people listening are like, Derek, that's literally every open world. Again, I'm just talking about feelings here. The feeling I felt was like, I feel like this is like how I felt when I was playing Breath of the Wild. Like I just
Yeah.
want to adventure off and go do my thing. I know there's a story that I'm supposed to be caring about and moving forward, but this is a game where I'm like, even as a guy who buys everything and has way too much to play, so I do like to move from place to place because I don't like staying in games too long because I want to play something else. This is the game where it's not like that for me, where I'm like, no, just stay in this as long as you can. You have nothing to prove to anybody. There's no reason to try to like get through it real fast. Just experience the story as it comes naturally, but enjoy the open areas, the open worldish areas, and just discover what you can. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I like to get my players and my characters to an OP status. And I'm right now playing this game on normal. I'm not playing it on easy, which sometimes I'll default to if I'm like, I don't care, I just want to beat the game. This is
Right.
a game where I'm like, I'm in no rush, so I actually want the normal experience because I want to work to get more powerful so I can compete against some of these tougher bosses.
Some of the
With
regular enemies do make you work as well. You're like,
oh
okay,
yeah,
all
but that's
right.
the thing. Like everything in this game, if you're willing to learn, trains you to get better at it
Yeah.
in a fun way. So I'm not dying every 5 seconds. In fact, maybe died once or twice. I can't even
I'll tell you
remember if
where
I
I
on.
died once so far. I'm sure I'm going to die more in this game. It was that stupid white wolf down on the beach that was for a side quest.
Yes, he
He
got me.
wiped us.
He's like the first
Yeah.
one that I was like, "What the frick, dude? I died in like
He
two
hits
seconds."
hard, and then I didn't heal quick enough, and then he did this AoE fire attack that just wiped us all. I was like, great.
Yeah.
Okay, never
Plus,
mind.
I didn't have my materia set up correctly. I'm not gonna sit here and say I've got it all figured out. I'm getting better. That's part of
I'm
the
right there with
systems
you.
where I'm like,
Yeah.
what goes with what? And the cool thing with this game is they've added a bunch of new materia that wasn't in the original game. So there's new materia that you can equip on players that you're not controlling, which the game really encourages you to switch a lot. Like there's
I switch a
benefits to
lot.
I do that as well too, which I
Yeah.
wasn't doing in the beginning. So I like Cloud. I
Yeah.
especially like him with my, I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't gotten it yet, the second sword.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
did you get it? Okay.
Uh-huh. I forget what it's
So the
called, but
sec
yeah,
yeah, the second sword has a special move that I am obsessed with.
it's awesome.
So I wanted to stay on it because it combines the lightning and fire attack with this special like aerial, like it's just really cool. And you could be aiming at one enemy, but if there's other enemies near him, he'll grab all of them and beat them all up with that move. So I like playing as Cloud, so I was like, well, I don't want to play as Aerith. Aerith is boring. And at that time, I was using Aerith, Tifa, and Cloud. I've switched parties up, and I'll talk about it in a second. But I find Aerith to be extremely boring. But I always hate playing as
Like a
healers
magic
and
caster. Yeah.
yeah, magic caster. That's boring to me. And then Tifa's cool. I like
Yeah.
her combat, but I didn't know her. I was just getting good at Cloud, so I didn't know her really well. So I didn't want to switch to her. I was like, you guys just do your thing. And then I noticed when I was fighting harder enemies, I'm like, what are they doing? Like, why is Aerith not healing me? I'm dying. Why do I have to heal myself? Fight everybody. You guys
Yeah.
are like boop 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 every once in a while. And then that's when I realized, and I'm sure you've discovered this, there's materia that you can assign to them that auto cast certain.
Yeah.
So for instance, Aerith, if I have Aerith equipped, I do the auto cast and I put healing there, and she'll auto heal me when I'm not using her. With Tifa, I did like one of her special moves, auto casts it whenever she hits her ATB.
Yeah,
So
there's like an auto abilities one too, I think, or something like
yeah,
that.
and then there's a materia up, which if
Mhm.
you the other materia that's cool is the combination of like fire and ice, or
Yeah.
I can't remember if it's fire and ice or
There's a fire and
lightning and
ice one I
ice.
have
Or
on Aerith right now. Yeah, so she can do
okay,
more
so there's
magic
a
types.
fire and ice, and then I got the second one too from what's his face, which is the other two elements
Okay.
combined.
Okay.
And those allow you to cast those two elements, but only take up one materia slot.
So it's like
Super cool,
wind,
but they
isn't it?
have a high like level.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I think it's
Wind
wind,
and
right?
lightning, and
Wind and
then
lightning. Yeah, yeah.
fire and ice or something
That's right.
like that.
Yeah.
But they have a real high like level to actually level them up.
Yeah.
So there's, I think it's called materia up, that if you use one of the combo materials where they're both
Yep.
linked, if you
Hmm.
link those two together, it will level those up faster, or whatever material you have there. So I've been doing that to level up the multiple. I think I have on Cloud. I think I'm using fire and ice or whatever.
Okay.
So I'm trying
Which
to
is
level those
motivation
up
to
fast.
like fight, 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 right? Like you at
Yeah.
first it could be like if I'm just fighting because it's fun, I get some experience, whatever. But now you start to see like, oh, these abilities and the materia. Now you're starting to like see little counters go up, dude. That's what I was gonna say that I love about this. And it's not the first game to do it. I know Remake had some elements of it. The original had some elements of this, but this just does it really well in a very user-friendly, easy to see way. And man, it can really get its hooks in you quick when you start to see all the systems and all the ways you can upgrade. And it's really addicting in a good way. Like it's just like, man, I love the hooks that this game already has in me. Yep.
Yeah, I want to give it some props because I said that Final Fantasy 16 is my favorite Final Fantasy game for sure, because I put it up there in top 5 probably of all time.
Mm.
Which that might change based off of, like I said, I
You'll replay it.
play games. I'm halfway through Final Fantasy 16 on New Game Plus, but
Okay.
unless I like play it over and over, then it will you'll start to hear me go, "Yep, greatest game, whatever." But
Yeah.
anyways, my point in bringing it up is what I loved about it, besides it having a darker theme and the characters,
Hmm.
is the combat is phenomenal. So why I bring that up is because Final Fantasy VII is just as good, but in a different way. And that's what I love about it is here you are, you've got this company with this big franchise releasing these big games not that far apart from each other, but they
Crazy.
feel so distinct while
Yeah.
still being very modern. Like they're not like, well, Final Fantasy 16 will go all action, and because we don't want to be too much like that, we better make Final Fantasy 7 turn-based like it originally.
Right.
They don't do that. They go, no,
Right.
it'll be action too, but it's going to have a lot of turn-based qualities and a lot of systems built in
Yep.
don't allow you to play it like how you would play Final Fantasy 16,
Agreed. Yeah, you play them
which
totally
is
differently. Hmm.
completely different, and it
How
gives
about
you a
operator
different
mode
experience.
versus Punisher mode with Cloud, huh? I love that.
Yes.
Dude, when you go into
I
Punisher
love the
mode, oh,
significant change, and then
uh-huh.
if you time the change correctly, he'll auto go into moves, and
Yeah.
it links it real well, which there's materia, I believe, that gives you bonuses for if you
Oh,
make that
nice.
switch perfectly, it gives you
Like a
bonuses
perfect
for it.
switch, whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there's so many systems to this game. By the way, I didn't tell you, I'm 20 hours in.
Okay.
Just made it to chapter 6. I'm not gonna spoil what it is, even if you know the story, because there's so many changes. I don't want to
Lots of
spoil it for
changes. Yeah.
anybody. I mean the whole purpose of this game, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know the Final Fantasy VII story pretty well, but I don't know it detailed.
Yeah.
But these shadow dudes, the ones that are just slowly walking that you're following, those weren't in Final Fantasy VII at all,
Oh, good
right?
question. Man, my memory's
I
not
don't think they
gonna serve me
were.
well
I
here. I
think
don't.
that's how they justify the change to the story,
Yeah, I'm not the right
is
one to
their
ask. I just don't
existence.
remember that detail of.
Okay.
I'll remember
I'm
like
pretty
Materia,
sure
the
they weren't.
summons, and that kind of stuff. I don't really remember that.
You know what? This is where we open up to the audience. If I'm wrong, make a comment or yell
Correct
at me in
me.
the Facebook group. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I don't think they were in the original. That's what justifies the story changes in Remake and Rebirth. And that's the thing. Like your literal plot in this game, and it's not really spoilery because they were in Remake, is you're just following these guys. And you have this belief that if you follow them, they'll lead you to Sephiroth. And that's your whole goal right now is I just gotta get to Sephiroth. I gotta get to him. I gotta get to him.
Yeah.
But I have I've really, really enjoyed every area I've gone to.
Mm.
I want to make sure I speak on this because I was saying how I don't like some of the cheesy dialogue from Remake and some of the stupid situations they put you in. There's only one situation so far they put me in this game where I was like, I want to do this. And I already experienced it in Final Fantasy VII, so I did make it this far in the game where you are
Is this the date?
where
Okay.
you join in the infantry and you have to like perform.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
another
Yeah.
timing like musical like bull
Yep.
crap, and it wasn't hard. I didn't fail. I got through it. If I would have failed, you would have heard me whine about it. If like I had to redo it over and over.
Yeah.
But that's the only part where there's a part of it where I guess you can move it forward if you only find 5 of your infantry groups, but they want you to find 10. So I went ahead and did the 10, and getting all 10 groups took forever because I just kept running in circles. I lack the ability or awareness to be like, hey, you've already been here. You don't need to go here again. Like I will keep
Leave some
going in the same
breadcrumbs, you
spot.
know?
Yeah, I keep going to the same spot thinking I haven't explored this, and then I go in, I'm like, my God, I've already been here. Where is these guys? So that's the only tedious thing I've done so far. Everything else has been good. I do want to make a comment on the board game. I think it's Blood Queen or Queen's Blood.
Yeah, Queen's Blood.
Uh, did you play it at all?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Well, I have a feeling we're not going to agree on this, and I could be wrong. I like it a lot, but I also love most of the little side card games in Final Fantasies. I loved Gwent in Witcher 3. Like
I was gonna say, I think you liked Gwent,
I
which I
really get
never
into these
really got
kind of
into.
games. Some more than others. This one is great. I love it, but I totally understand if it doesn't click for some people. It's got a very what I consider to be simple premise in that you have to outscore them across these 3 different rows,
The
right? So the
three,
premise is
yeah,
easy, but in execution it can become pretty tough pretty quick.
yeah,
Um,
it does.
but yeah, so I like it a lot. And I'm glad that the game. Well, it's not like not gonna let you continue if you don't play it and love it. You can totally ignore it.
So there's a side quest in the grasslands where they're like, "Hey, play this game, beat this bartender." So that's the first time I experienced it because I didn't pay attention to dialogue. I just jumped in and I'm like, "Oh shit, I've got to play this." I always avoid these card games, by the way.
I know
So I'm
you
like,
do.
"Oh great, I just unlocked a side quest because my goal was like to do every quest where I have to play this game." So I do the quest, I fail, which then means I'm angry. So I'm like, no, I'm not doing this side quest. I'm not learning this game. I'm gonna ignore it, which I did. So I walked away. I've already left the Greenlands, obviously, and this is a minor spoiler for people, real minor. I wouldn't even say it in front of you if I thought it was gonna ruin your experience. But there's a main quest that forces you to play the game,
Isn't it a
and
different
you.
version of the game though, or no?
I think it's the same version.
Oh, is it? Okay, okay. I've heard that
So
there's
it's a
like an altered version of it that makes it a little more accessible or something.
I'll have to go back to the Greenlands when I can. I can't right now, and I will check out that side quest. Because here's my point: I didn't like it. I get into this. They forced me to play it. I failed a lot because at first I didn't know what I was doing. I understood what you were saying, the 3 rows. I didn't want to outscore them. I didn't understand
But
how
how
to
do I
outscore them
score? Right.
because I'm like I have all these cards. I don't know which cards are good, which one's bad. And if you just go by the numbers, like, hey, card has 5 points. 5 points, good. Well, if all you do is put a bunch of 4s and 5s, you're never going to be able to play, and you get destroyed. You
Right.
actually need
And
a lot of
you'll get
1s,
if you don't do it
2s.
smartly, you're gonna get locked out of being able to place any more cards, and then you have to pass and just let them finish if you're not careful.
Happened to me a lot. So I was getting angry, and then I started because the game forces you into this tournament. and you have to keep winning. You can't just go, okay, I lost, I quit, I move on. It's a main quest. So I had to get good. And after winning the tournament, I was like, I like this little card game. It's kind of fun. I think I'll go back when I can to the Greenlands and do that side mission. So even the side content stuff that I personally normally ignore, forces you to do it, but does it in a way where I will say it could be frustrating if you suck at stuff like I do, but because they're making you do it, they are teaching you how to do it. And so
Okay.
common sense starts to kick in and you start to go, "Oh, I see the mistakes I'm making. Oh, I see how I can do this better." And then I eventually won the tournament. And that's actually where I left off. I beat the tournament and then it goes into some combat and then you go to chapter
Like real
6.
real combat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not that fake card crap. So overall, Rebirth has been. I had high expectations. I
Oh
really
man,
did.
same.
After replaying remake and loving it, I couldn't wait. I say it's tied, and to say it's tied for with Dragon's Dogma 2 as most hyped game for 2024 is a huge compliment because I'm a huge Dragon's Dogma fan.
Mm.
So I was that excited for this. And sometimes when I let myself get excited about things, I do get disappointed, even though I think I'm overly a positive gamer. You won't rarely see me post negative thoughts bashing games, and I like a lot of different style of games. This game has not only met my expectations, again, I know I haven't beat it, but I'm pretty far in. I'm 20 hours in. It's met my expectations and surpassed it.
Boy, what a
Um,
twist that would be if a game that you're 20 hours into, you get the basics of it, all of a sudden you hate. That'd be quite a twist. I can't imagine
it's
that
like,
happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
If they make me do 10 more card games for the rest of the game is just main
It's
mission
just
card
Queen's
games.
blood just over and over again.
Or
Derek's like,
that
you're about to see Derek's blood because
Condor game or whatever it is.
yeah.
Whatever that game, they make you play that too for another quest. And I was like, stop,
There,
guys. I know what you're trying to do,
I've
but
heard there's a
stop.
lot of mini games in this. Most I
There
assume
is.
are optional, but it sounds like some are part of the main quest. So
Definitely Queen's Blood, but I compliment it. I really liked it. And even the other like board game where it's like your little toys and you go fight. Actually, I got beat when I first started that, but once I got the hang of it, I was like, this is kind of fun too. I get the strategy. It's
yeah,
you've got little movable toys. They've got their stats. You got to make sure you place them in the right spot and take on these enemies, and you've got a timer too. So you can't just be like, I got to be stronger. You got to get to the boss and beat the boss within a couple of minutes. So you got to really move it. So
yeah,
overall, my experience has been absolutely amazing.
same.
I mean, we're early on. This is definitely the
Right.
best game I played. Uh, that being said, I'll let you end with your thoughts of Final Fantasy VII, but I'm going to transition us into another really good game in 2024.
Yeah, so Rebirth is, like you said, it's meeting all my expectations, just exceeding them, really. I think it's doing a great job of storytelling. I was intrigued right away. I didn't necessarily want to do the flashback they made you do at the beginning, but as I played through it, I was like, this is awesome. I love what they're doing, telling the story. So, story-wise, I'm really digging how things are being laid out. I'm very confused as to the very, very beginning with, slight spoilers if you never finished Remake or haven't seen this, but Zach kind of picks up from where Remake left off at the kind of the credits sequence there, and it's like, oh yeah, makes sense that they have to finish, like he's helping Cloud, and so like, but he goes into the city and there's an emergency happening, and you see characters, you're like, wait, why are they going into an ambulance? Like, I was very confused, and I'm very much looking forward to understanding that more, and I'm really digging that they kind of put that out there for his little teaser, like, hey,
I
here's something to think about. And maybe some people get it right away. Maybe. I have no idea how. I definitely don't, but I'm looking forward to all that stuff unfolding. So really intrigued by it.
Yeah, we're gonna see a bunch of different Spider-Mans show up in the game later to
Can't
let
wait for
us know
Willem
this is
Dafoe to show up.
this is a
Yeah.
different multiverse, and Zach is in a different
What if
verse
what if
with a
Sephiroth comes
different
up but his
Cloud.
it's Sephiroth but his face is Willem Dafoe? It'd be like the most terrifying thing ever. Anyway,
Mother.
yeah.
But yeah, so great experience, great game. I look forward to talking about it in future podcasts with other people. Hopefully, maybe Kyle can make it or get Jeff, and definitely want to get Dan on here too, as probably as he gets further through the game. I'd like to talk to him about the entire experience.
Yep.
But let's talk about a game that I know you and I have both played a good chunk of, and I would call it a pleasant surprise. Obviously, I bought it day one, so I thought it would be decent, but I am surprised by how decent it is. It's a really good game, and that's Banishers. I only wrote down Banishers. I forgot the rest of the
It's
title, so if
Ghosts
you
of
know it.
New Eden.
Okay, Ghosts of New Eden. So why don't you kick us off with, first of all, maybe give us the listeners the premise of the game and then your initial thoughts, and maybe start with your expectations when you bought the game and then your initial thoughts when you actually started playing it.
Yeah, so this is from DONTNOD, who we mostly know from Life is Strange and had a couple other games. Tell Me Why, I think was them too. But then they made this game called
Yeah.
Vampire, which, by the way, because of Banishers, I have now purchased. It was on a steep sale. I found it on CD Keys, so I am going to try Vampire finally. I never tried that game.
Let me say this before you continue with Vampire, because I bought that one also day one. I don't know if you'll like it. I understand. I think Kyle said in the chat they mirror each other, and they do. There are systems in the game where you'll be like, "Oh, I see where Banishers got this from. They got
Right.
it from when they made Vampire." But Vampire does not play even remotely as good as
Right.
Banishers, and Banishers
Right.
that's not the good part of it. But
I
I think
agree.
it nails some of the other stuff. But I would say take your expectations and drop them a
That's
couple of
fair.
points with if you
Yeah.
play Vampire,
I think
because
Vampire is
it's
like in the 6 to 7 range, and Banishers, as we know, is getting like 81 average on Open Critic, which is amazing.
they've definitely made it better, a
Yeah.
better version of it.
So
But
yeah,
yes.
that's a good call. Expectations will be in check if I do dive when I do dive back into that one. But
Hmm.
yeah, so it's from Don't Nod, and if you know anything about, if you've played any of their games, even Vampire, from what I've heard, the setting and characters, dialogue, the tone they set is always strong, even if maybe their gameplay doesn't always deliver on it in every way.
Yeah,
The setting is certainly, and the setting is very strong here too. It features
very
two main
strong.
characters, Red and Antea, and they are banishers. Their job is to essentially assist those who are stuck in the spirit realm to move on and solve haunting cases, which that's one of my favorite things about the game, is solving these haunting mysteries. But yeah, that's their job. And so they arrive in this town. They sail across the Atlantic from Europe, which is, so Red is Scottish. I'm not sure where Antea is from yet. A lot of dialogue has happened, and I can't quite tell what country she's from, but they reference their homelands a couple different times.
Hmm.
I'm thinking Northern Africa, Egypt. I'm not sure where she's from.
Racist. Go ahead.
Southern Africa. Anyway,
She's black, people.
but by the way, they're great characters.
Oh yeah.
I find their interactions to be so believable, and I actually
They feel
probably
like a couple.
I
They
love
feel
them.
like a couple.
Yeah,
And
they
not
really
like the lovey-dovey. They do
no
have lovey-dovey parts, but like just the way they
true
communicate,
deep
not in a
friends that
disrespectful
are,
way
yeah,
either. Exactly, like friends who really like each other and that
yes.
they're in love. So
And there's a deep respect there for each other and their skill sets. There's a little bit of banter, but not a ton. A little bit of teasing, but not like obnoxious. It's mostly sincere and thoughtful. And boy, do I really like it. So I like the two main characters. They arrive in New England. They got a message from an old friend of theirs who actually trained them to be banishers, um, to come and help. And they arrive, and things have gone awry, and then other things unfold, and they find themselves separated. This is not a spoiler. This is right in the, you can't miss it. It's on the thumbnail for the game, that you've got one character who clearly is like human and alive, and one who's in ghost form. So you know something's going to be separating them. So some things unfold. They are separated between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead. And that's when not only the gameplay but the story really takes off. And yeah, that's kind of the setup for the game.
even how they did that was pretty haunting. Like that, the character that takes her life
Yeah.
is very haunting, and it
Yeah.
gives you like almost horror vibes, although the game's not
Yeah.
really horror at all. There are some creepy creatures, but nothing
Yeah.
about the game makes you go, "Oh, I don't want to walk in this place. It's too scary." It's not like that at all.
Agreed. Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
No jump scares. that. Yeah.
No, it's definitely a they've borrowed a good amount from, well, trying to borrow from God of War
I
when it
was gonna
comes to
say
like the
that.
combat. Even like when you switch to Antea, I think that was her name, and her like punching,
Yep.
it feels a lot like God of War punching. So,
Yeah.
and
You
then
go to rage
obviously,
mode or whatever, and you just start punch, punch,
yeah,
punch.
and then there's just even the camera, how close it gets, and everything like that. I will say this: I initially I didn't hate the combat. I never hated it, but I was like, oh, this is
Dude, me
actually was
too.
like, turn it down, you should just turn this down to easy and just play it for the story.
Right.
And then as I started unlocking more stuff, I was like, nope, this is fine on normal and it's actually fun.
Right.
Um, I've been enjoying the combat more. I don't know how far you're in. I'm about halfway through the game. I'm about 11, 12 hours in.
Yep.
Um, so I've unlocked a good amount. So I've seen, I think, pretty much the bulk of what the combat's gonna be. Um, I don't think it's bad, but it's not great. So it doesn't have
I
that
agree.
tightness,
Yeah.
but
I would
it's
call the combat
still
good.
fun.
Yeah. I would call
My
it good.
only
Yeah.
issue, yeah, my only issue with it, and this was the reason I was asking. I don't know how far you're in, is there's just times where enemies will come out of nowhere. I know they have the God of War alert system, but you're literally I'm pretty aware on a battlefield where my enemies are. And
Yeah.
so I'm fighting and then all of a sudden somebody will just show up and they're hitting me and I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
So I don't like that. I like
It's very
that,
similar to God of War in that respect, where
yeah.
it's like you even have the little like spirit hula hoop around your body that'll like glow red or orange when
Yes.
you got something coming at you. So very God of War like. You're
And
right with the way
sometimes
the
I
camera
get,
zoomed in. It's like,
yeah.
where is it? So you find yourself weirdly dodging and rolling just backwards or to the side, like to try to clear the space and see where everything is sometimes. So yeah, similar knocks that I think we've had about the God of War games, but also ways around them. You can kind of learn the systems a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not perfect by any stretch.
Not
And by the way,
definitely
nowhere
not
near
tight
as
as
good,
God of War. I
nowhere
just want to
near
make
as
sure
good
we
as God
state
of
that.
War. Yes,
Yeah.
the combat's nowhere near as
We're
good.
not overpraising it. We
No.
just know that they're taking from those systems and they do a pretty good job. This
Yeah,
isn't, I know they're probably I wouldn't consider them triple A studio even though they have triple A success in some of their games. I
yeah.
feel like they're more of a double A
It
studio. I
feels
could be
double A to
wrong.
me. It feels double A to
This
me.
game
Yeah.
feels like a top tier double A
Yes.
experience. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we said it on the recording or if we said it before we started recording, but you brought up like Greedfall, which I'm a big fan of Greedfall. Greedfall has through and through was a really, really good game, and I'm
High
gonna again
quality
highly
double A game.
recommend you. It's a high quality double A game, but Banishers is above that. Like I have no problem saying as much as I love Greedfall, this is definitely above it when it comes to combat, story. I want to stick on the story and characters for just a second.
Yeah.
That I love the most about this. And when we say they nailed it, they absolutely nailed it. And they nailed the way you advance the story. So a lot of what you're doing is solving mysteries of what's happened to these ghosts. Like, so you've got a bunch of stories that some are side quests, but a lot of them are tied to the main quest where it's like you come into a town, let's say, and you meet certain characters and somebody's died in their past and they're tied to them, they're being haunted by them or something's going on. And then you have to unlock the mystery of what happened to this person. Was it murder or did they die accidentally? When they died, did they have a good relationship with the person that are haunting or did they hate them? Were they after revenge, forgiveness, love? It There's a full on spectrum. You really
Yep.
don't know. Like you would probably assume, oh, Ghost is haunting character. There's an issue here. But sometimes it's just they're not actually haunting them in a
Yep.
negative sense. They're haunting them because they love them and maybe
Right.
they're trying to connect with them and get them to move forward or something like that. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on in these mysteries and the way they unfold them, like the the way you solve the mysteries is fun and interesting. And the reason I bring that up is I've played games where there's like this mystery mechanic where it's like, hey, you got to solve this mystery or you've got to observe the area, and it's not done in a fun way. This game has a good mix of you still have to observe items, you still have to look at things, you still have to follow paths and stuff like that,
A lot of
but it
dialogue
never
choices.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it never overstays its welcome. They always
Right.
mix in combat,
Yeah.
which, like I said, it doesn't also overstay its welcome. So it's really I would say it's
Very
balanced
balanced.
really
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And
I'm
then
with you,
when
man. I
you,
love the mysteries, by the way. Some of them have
yeah,
truly surprised me. I'm like, oh, I did not see this one going that way.
exactly. That's where I
Yep.
was going. Is like the mysteries are fun, like
Mhm.
fun as far as
Like
like
short,
once
it's like
you,
short stories. There's a big story,
yes,
and then you get these. It's almost like The Witcher 3, where you get these little
I was
short
just gonna
stories
say,
that just
yeah.
totally pull you in. You're like, okay, pause, big story. What happened to the blacksmith? You know what I mean? Like you just get sucked into that.
Exactly.
Hmm.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to bring up The Witcher, that one of the things The Witcher 3 gets complimented for is, yes, everybody likes, for the most part, the overarching story and they want to move forward, but they found themselves going, and back then games didn't do it as well as The Witcher did it. That's why it stuck out. Is The Witcher 3 side stories and sub stories were like, hey, this is just as interesting, if not as interesting as the main campaign, and combine that with I know how my brain goes, hey, I could have totally missed this.
Yep,
How unfortunate if I would have missed this. And that's
that's right.
kind of gotten me where the main mysteries and solving them has been so good and fun that anytime I see a side one, I'm like, yes, I'm doing it.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
what I just talked about with like the card games and stuff. No, I want to avoid it, right? This is
right.
going, no, I want to do it. And that's why I think when I looked up a guide just to see where I was at, yes, I remember now. I'm like 60% through the game, but I'm
Okay.
at 13 hours, I think. And most playthroughs were beating it in 18 to 20 hours, which means I'm taking my time and I'm exploring every area I can explore. It's not open world, by the way. It's like open area-ish, but it's still
Yeah, but
semi-linear.
lots of side paths with lots of shortcuts to
Yeah,
create. Like,
they do a good job of like it's open, but not. Again, it's balanced. It's
and
a very
they don't
balanced
trick you.
game.
Like you can see, like, oh, there's the orange rocks. I can slip through the crevice here, or I can climb up to this next
Yeah.
level. They're not trying to like make you waste your time. Every time you do that, you're gonna find something, some kind of material you might need, or maybe an item, or maybe a chest that you need to go find a key to unlock. You don't have to do that stuff, but you can. And I like doing that, doing all that.
And then it's
So yeah,
got some of the Metrovania type stuff where it's like, hey,
yeah,
as you unlock this ability, you now can fast travel back to an area
yeah.
you've
There was a wall
previously
that you
been.
saw. What am I
Yeah,
supposed to do with this?
yeah. Like
I
she
like
unlocks the
exploring.
ability to like smash walls. Well, throughout the game, I kept running into these walls, and I'm like,
I
well,
would
how
just
do
try to
I?
hit him, and I couldn't get it to break.
Yeah, I was like, I
Yeah,
don't understand this. Like they're highlighting it. The game's
yeah,
letting me know it's there and that I should be able to do something. And then eventually my brain went, well, maybe this is something I come back to. And sure enough, a little bit later in the game, I'm like, oh, I
yeah,
use this ability to get rid of these walls. Got it. Okay,
yeah.
cool. So it has a little bit of backtracking, but again, there's fast travel
Yep.
all throughout this game. You can fast travel to many, many little bonfire campsites. To allow you to go back and explore areas that you originally passed when you were playing just through the campaign. But
Yep.
definitely
And
a
wouldn't you
surprise for
compare
me.
it to when I think of like the RPG elements, they're very light, but they're there. You can upgrade
Yeah.
abilities because you level up and you get skill points to use for both Red and Antea. They have a separate but connected skill trees. You can kind of unlock one in each little cluster of
Hmm.
abilities. And then there's also equipment that you can put on and then upgrade. It reminds me of Horizon a little bit, just in terms of
Yeah.
like put this item in the slot and upgrade it if you want, or get this other one. They all have pros and cons, and you have to
And
figure
every
out which
equipment
one.
has a bonus. So like if you
Everything has a
want to
bonus. So it
do
reminds me of Horizon in that respect.
yeah, like if you want to make your main attack your gun, you want to make it
Yes.
more powerful, you would naturally level up by just leveling up the equipment, but also the bonuses. Based off of what you're equipping, it may make your rifle extremely powerful, or it may make your sword more powerful, and it changes your play style that way.
Yep.
Um, so there's a, it is, I would definitely side with it's light on the RPG,
Very
but
light.
there's enough depth there. Again, so it goes back to, I guess I didn't know this before we started talking about this game. I would call this a very balanced experience. Like they're
Yeah,
very
I would too.
balanced on how well they tell the story and when they intrude with the combat.
Yeah.
They're very balanced, and on the RPG side, they're very balanced on how they unravel the story, the
Yep.
side content, the mysteries. And the last thing I wanted to touch on, and then obviously you can add on anything else, is I really just want to emphasize that if you like story-driven games, like for instance, I have always said this, and that's why I compliment this game so much, and maybe this will change a listener out there on how they approach this game if they ever play it. Anytime I've ever played like a Telltale game or even the DOTNOD experience and been like, I've said this before, so I'm not just making it up. I've been like, man, they really do story and the weight of these choices really, really well. I
Yes.
just wish I could play one of those games and have, and I've always said this, decent combat. Voila. There you go.
That's good.
Banishers now exist, and that's literally what it is. It's so heavy on the atmosphere, the
Yeah.
story, the
Yep.
characters. Also, the voice acting and dialogue is top notch. So that would give me, if I was watching somebody play this, that would give me triple A vibes.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe the combats where you would be like, yeah, it's double A. But
Yeah.
it's good enough and passable enough that you can go, this is what Derek, this is what you've been asking for. They're giving it to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
enjoy it. And you might go, well, there's other games out there that have great stories and have triple A experiences when it comes to combat. There
True.
are.
Yep.
That's very true. But a lot of times those games, maybe the story gets overshadowed by because the combat's so good. But because this game's combat isn't as good, I'm emphasizing the weight of how good the story is, and I'll pay attention to more. I always use the whenever I talk about Souls games, I hear the biggest complaint is the stories are told terribly, and I never fight with people or that. That's totally fine. But I always try to give you a different outlook or a different perspective. If the games were so story driven and had cutscenes and you're playing this game going, I want to move forward, and then they say, oh, by the way, you're going to get stuck on this boss because you suck and it's really hard
Good luck
for
continuing
the
the
next
story that you're
10
interested in.
hours. Do not tell me you would not be bitching about how this combat's too hard for me
Absolutely.
to enjoy my story. So
Yeah.
the games, I think, the stories are intentionally told that way
Yeah.
so you can focus what you're there for, and which is that game's all about gameplay with, hey, enjoy a little bit of the side story or content here, but that's not why you're here.
Yeah.
Banisher's just saying, you're here for the story, you're here for the dialogue, you're
Yeah.
here, and I'm gonna make sure I emphasize this for the choices, because
Yeah.
that's the other thing you and I haven't really talked about. There's major choices in
That's a
this
big
game, and again,
RPG element too. RPG light for
Vampire
the
does that
combat,
too.
but the when you're choosing dialogue and changing, and by the way, you absolutely can change the outcome of the overall story as
Completely
well as
change it.
individual moments. That's very RPG heavy right there, in my opinion. So it does have some
Huge.
RPG pieces. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like that to me is beyond the story, which that kind of adds to the story and what makes it so good is the weight of the decision. So and I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a decision that your two characters, after she's passed away, you guys decide a big decision. And you can change it as you play the game. There's certain things, choices you have to make that you either stick to the decision you made in the beginning of the game or you go
Mhm.
against it.
I mean, it's
But
called your
like
oath, and you can see it in the menu. So it's a big deal. You made an
yes,
oath to
it's a
each other.
big oath, like a big decision, a big
Yeah.
choice. It's a commitment. You
Yeah.
can break the commitment, but through doing that, there are going to be consequences, which I obviously can't speak on right now because I haven't beat the game. But just from fighting Cowboy, before I bought the game, I watched him play it. He had already beat the game when I was watching him play it, and he's like, "By the way, guys, I'm going back and redoing the ending because I didn't like my ending because I did this, this, and this, and I screwed this up." So he's basically saying the choices I made, the way I played it, impacted my ending in a way I did
Yeah.
not like. That now I want to go back and fix this, which he ended up doing a second playthrough to fix it.
That's cool.
So
Yeah,
that
there's a
tells you
character that
right
you
there.
meet that tells your two main characters at some point The secret to defeating the thing you're trying to defeat is your bond together. And so that just right away I was like, oh, so that oath is important. And if I make it and do something different, our bond isn't going to be so close because we made an oath together and we're not
Yeah.
following it. So it's pieces like that that jump out at me. Like it's really, really interesting. I love the choices that you get to make in this. I love even at the campfires when they sit and talk.
Yeah.
Those even like the little transition from getting up, one of you helps the other up. It usually is random, and then the way the animation works, she
Yeah.
disappears as the camera pans behind him. She's there, but then as the camera
Super cool.
pans, she's gone. It's just like really
Super cool.
smooth, really smooth. I mean, that's AAA level of transitions. They didn't need to do that.
Which I don't know if this will end up being thing, but I know without spoiling it, I feel like the way they keep showing as he sleeps her and what she's doing, I think that's gonna play into the story because they keep
Yeah.
showing. I'm like, they're delaying us going from resting to into gameplay for about 10 to 15 seconds, showing the same thing over and over. I feel like it's trying to tell me, maybe I'm reading into it too much.
Who
It's
knows?
telling me
Yeah.
something about what she's experiencing that might play into the end of the game.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I also really like the boss fights. I've only done, I think I've done, there's one at the beginning that it counts because you do have to get to a certain point in the fight before the
yes,
story
yes.
continues. And then I think there's been maybe two more. I mean, there's been lots of like smaller bosses that don't have a boss
Yeah,
bar. Um, by the
I think
way,
I've
I've
had a
hit some.
few.
Oh no, I've had a number that are optional ones. I'm sure you've done those, like the optional elites that you can fight.
Yeah,
Which, by
yeah.
the way, those are
All the
tough.
time. Yeah, the elites, they keep coming and keep spawning
And
and
they'll spawn
yes.
these other enemies that are much stronger versions of the normal enemies, and I'm like, dude, I was doing 40, 50 damage and now I'm doing like 3, so I have to like mix up my
Also,
attacks and like, oh, it
she'll
gets
talk to
tough.
you and be like, "You can use me," meaning like there's times where I'm using my sword to fight these enemies and they're more susceptible to her fists
Exactly,
because she's a
exactly.
ghost and they're a ghost. So
Well, then I
why
started
are
using
you?
the combos. So like that's where the combat to me started to elevate a little
Yeah,
bit from the above average into the good territory where
agreed.
I activated the combo where I do 3 hits with the sword and then finish it by switching to her. And all I have to do is hit switch and she'll do this uppercut and knock him back and do a bunch of damage. Or I'll do a dash with him and switch with her mid dash and she'll do a jump kick and like knock him
Yeah,
down. And like once I started mixing these things in and then switching to his gun, shooting, switching to her and dashing to them and hitting, I was like, oh, sorry. I was like, dude, not only is this fun, this is why I like the comparison to God of War. Again,
yeah.
if God of War is a 10, in combat, this is like an 8 maybe. Like it's not there. It doesn't have quite the feel. I'm not saying it's anywhere, but in God of War, as I was swapping between axe and blades and spear, and as I was switching, I felt
Hmm.
awesome. I felt so strong. I felt like I was varying my attacks and everything looked really cool. And this has like a God of War light vibe to it in some fights. So I
I think it
really dig
just
the combat too.
lacks. There's only two things to me that it lacks that it couldn't be in that God of War tier is that it has the janky loose camera.
It does have
Um,
that.
and damn it, I forgot the second one. It was the
There's
major
not a lot of
one.
enemy variety, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were gonna say that, but there's not a lot of, and there's only a handful of types of enemies, and I'm about where you are. So I looked at there's 6 main sections, 16 total chapters, and I'm in like you can pick between the fourth or fifth section which one you want to do first. And so
Yeah.
I'm in the first of those two,
I think I'm
which
on
is
chapter 9, 9 or
yeah,
10.
okay, yeah, that's roughly where I am. So there's a part where you get to pick. You want to go
Yeah,
up to
I
this
already did
fort or
that.
down to there. So
I
that's
did the fort. That's
okay.
actually where I'm at. I've been in the fort for a
That's where
while.
I am right now. So I think we're at the exact same spot.
Yeah.
So yeah, enemy types aren't super varied, but it's also kind of okay. I don't want this game to last forever and really push the limits of my combat abilities. And so far it hasn't. Although there have been a few fights that I'm on my last healing flask, and I'm like, dude, this is kind of tough. I've had a few of those, all for the optional battles. Boss fights have been easy.
Yeah, the optional
It's
one.
it's the optional ones that are tough. But I like them because you get good items for it, and yeah, I like doing those. But
Going
oh,
back to what I was going to say about
yeah,
God of War, I remember my second part. I said the
yeah,
loose, janky camera, but also the weight, like the weight of your impact
yes.
of your sword swings, the punches.
Even your
That's the
movement.
stuff. Yes. So when I play games like this, it helps me appreciate the stuff that sometimes maybe gets overlooked in our AAA experience. experiences that we get from like the God of Wars, the Horizon. Sorry, there are no Xbox games that have these experiences. Only on PlayStation do you find these. It's a joke, people. But anyways, those AAA experiences, they usually have that weight. They have that locked in camera, meaning like it moves exactly how it needs to move. Like Souls games pretty much nail all movements. Like you don't ever
Yes, they
feel
do.
like that was janky or that's off. That doesn't feel right. Everything feels right. This game doesn't hit that, and that's what I'm talking about. So it has the janky camera. It doesn't have the weight and movements that are as tight and crisp that you're used to. And if they ever nailed that, that's when I think you'd be like, wait, this, hey, we got to stop acting like this isn't at the level of those games. It could
Yeah.
be. They have the
Yeah.
potential. They're another studio. When I see them put out a game like this, they definitely have my hooks. I already like them for some of their story driven stuff. Now I'm going to be even more interested in them whenever they release more games like this, which I believe this game has been a success for
I
them.
think so. I think it has too. Yep.
And I think we will get more stuff like this.
Man, they're
So,
introducing a world that's beyond the little town and surrounding area that you're in. And they've talked about a lot of areas like doing banishing across the sea, even. So part of me, almost to the effect of something like The Last of Us, you're like, all right, cool. I'm actually interested if you want to tell other stories too, because this world is so intriguing. What you've set up here is so interesting. So I'd be totally down for a Banishers sequel where it's ghosts of somewhere else, ghosts of London, and take me back to England with a different set of characters if you want to, whatever.
yeah.
Um, I'd be totally down for that because I'm with you. This is a intriguing and surprising entry this year. It's one of those ones that I was looking forward to it as we talked about games last year. I remember thinking this game looks really cool, but in the back of my mind, kept telling myself, you remember Vampire? It didn't get great reviews. You skipped it because it was kind of middling reviews and people didn't love it as much. It's gonna be that. It's gonna be that. Calm down. And I'm just really happy that not only did I just bite the bullet and grab it because the vibe of this one
Mhm.
really hit me, but man, is it delivering
You
the
bought it
character
on
connection.
PCs, right?
Yeah,
PC,
yeah.
right? Okay.
I played it on the Steam Deck a little bit too. It's not officially Steam Deck verified, but it does run well on the Steam Deck. It works great for me. I think it just has the
Okay, good.
warning of like text or something that's too small.
Oh, that's
But
not a
anyway,
big deal.
I think it runs great on the Steam Deck. Man, this game is great, and it's been nice to have a game like this when I really want to play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but the big TV is taken. I'm like, that's okay. I got my Steam Deck or my PC, and I've got this incredible game that really I wasn't sure I was going to get through it. I thought I would sideline it and hopefully come back to it in the spring or summer. We'll
Hmm.
see. But because of the way things have worked out with what's available to me, I'm like, dude, even though Rebirth is out and that's my main game, that's one of the best games of the year easily. If that's the best game of this year so far, easily one of the best
Yeah.
games in a long time. Um, but that's okay. I know I'm gonna spend 50 hours with that game, but right now I can't. So Banishers has been a great, I don't know what the right word is, but a great kind of side game that I've been able to experience. Man, am I really
Yeah.
enjoying it.
It's a totally different experience from Final Fantasy, so I would agree. I don't mind switching over to it because I like to play. I like to play two games at once, at
Yeah,
least, like two main games. So
yeah,
I like to have my main one, and then when I'm like, I'm not in the mood to play this, I'll boot up another one. And
yeah.
so Banishers was obviously my main one before Final Fantasy came out. Then when Final Fantasy came out, I was still dabbling in Banishers, and then now, like the last 3 or 4 days, I've been all Final Fantasy. But there's gonna be a time before I beat it where I'll be like, all right, I need a little break from this. I might go back to Banishers.
Yep,
And even just
yep.
having this conversation with you makes me go, all right, I need to go back to Banishers
Yeah,
because
I'm
I
gonna
can beat
finish it.
that.
I'm gonna finish it
I
this
can.
week, I
Oh, I'm
think.
definitely beating it.
Yeah,
It's just when I want
when,
to beat
yeah,
it. I wish I could just beat it now. Like I wish
yeah.
I could beat it in the next few hours, but it's not gonna what it's gonna be. And I don't want to. I don't want to try to rush the last half of the game just because
Yep.
I'm like, well, I just want to finish Final Fantasy, so I just need to beat this. I just want to play it when I want to play it. So I
I
will
hear you.
take my time because I think it's a quality game and I don't
It
want
is
to rush
it
it.
is absolutely quality. I think if you are a fan of how you've heard it described, um, God of War light, it's like a poor man's God of War style combat. It's that style of combat at least. Doesn't feel the same, but it's that style of combat. Plague Tale level of world building
Yeah.
and environment and just kind of the eeriness of things. There's kind of a weight on everything, and the characters are intriguing. The voice acting, by the way, we didn't talk about that. Really good across the board. Really, really good
Very
voice
good.
acting. Um, and so if that stuff intrigues you, to me, it's like an easy recommend. And if it goes on sale, it is a must buy if you are intrigued by those elements in games. That's
If you
how I
got a
would classify
PC,
it.
buy it now. It's like $40 on CD keys. If you don't have a PC and you play on console, I can't tell you how it performs. I don't know. I imagine it's decent. I have seen in other groups people talking about it on PlayStation. I never
Struggling a
saw
little
any
bit.
complaints about it.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't hear any real
Okay.
complaints
This
about the
this game
gameplay.
strikes me as something that'll be on Game Pass and or PS Plus. I wouldn't be surprised to
Yeah,
see it on one of those services or both this year. At the very least, though, it's gonna hit a discount. So if you're waiting to save a few dollars, like
I would
this
say
game is worth it at 50. You can get it for a little cheaper, like Derek said, for 40. If it hits a sale for 30 or less, in my opinion, it's a
it's a
must buy.
definite buy. It's a
Yeah.
must buy. I agree. All
Yeah.
right, so before we close out this show, one last thing I wanted to do, and it's going to be part of our show. Obviously, deep dive into the games we're currently playing, but I just wanted to give you time. Is there anything that you've beaten recently that you would want to like share about? Any games that you finished recently?
Let me pull up my list. So I did beat Prince of Persia. This was several weeks ago, but that's probably the most
Okay,
relevant recent one. That game is challenging, and and I love
it
it for
wore
that.
me out.
It
It
is a
wore me out.
tough game. I mean, it demands you to be on point with your platforming skills. Your timing must be
I feel
excellent.
like it was harder than Ori.
It's on par at least with Ori. It depends on probably your style, like what you think is more challenging than others. But to me, it's on par with that. And some of the optional platforming sequences are just mean, like so so
Insane.
mean. Oh yeah, like the stuff that's required is tough. So the optional
Yeah.
stuff will make you break a controller. But I mean that in a good way. I think Ubisoft created a game for platform gamers that love a challenge. And I kind of like that. I like that they did that. I like that it's not necessarily accessible for everyone. My son and I, who he's also the big fan of Metroid Dread and the Ori games, he
Hmm.
loves a challenging platformer. He loved this. And I've had him play other platformers that were too easy and he loses interest. So there's something about the challenge and the grind. I mean, you're a Dark Souls player, you get this. There's
Yeah, I
something
was gonna
about the
say that's
challenge
a
and the
Souls
grind
type thing
and
right
the
there.
exactly, and the satisfaction of like, I did that, I did it. And
I overcame it. Yeah.
yeah, so I loved Prince of Persia. It's, to me, it's the best thing Ubisoft has made in a while. Maybe that's not saying a lot. They've been a little bit off, and I understand
They've
that.
been weird lately. I don't understand
Uh,
them.
but it is an excellent, excellent game. Like to me, it's one of my personal favorites. Rebirth, of course, is kind of a game changer, literally. But yeah, Prince of Persia, excellent.
I got actually pretty far in that game. I don't know because I haven't played it in a while how far. I think the last main thing I did was it beating the snake?
Uh-huh.
I
It's
may
dude,
have beat another
it
boss
it
after
keeps
that.
going. It's a long game. That map gets huge. Yeah.
I know. Oh, I have to do like I don't want to say stars, but I have to get the weapons.
Uh-huh.
And you have to go to certain areas in the map and you have to get to like shoot a arrow into the sky.
Yep.
I think I've done two of them. Maybe it's four of them. I think
There's
I've done
four.
two and I have to
Yeah.
get another two. And I
Yeah.
stopped on my way to the third one because I got lost and I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of over this game because I put
Yeah.
a lot of time into it. Like
Yeah.
I just told you where it
That's
was.
far
I'm
into
pretty
the
far
game.
in.
That's far in,
So
man.
that part of me is like, well, Derek, you got that far. You should beat it. But it's that it's that Souls thing, but it's not my soul thing. So what I mean is like
Yeah.
it's that challenging thing that I get why you and your son would be like, I gotta overcome this. I
Yeah.
get the hook, but it's not mine. Like I've
Yeah.
never been a Metroid guy.
But you played both
I'm not
Ori games, so you've got
I
enough
love
interest in them.
Ori.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So I do think at some point I will go back and play it because I will not knock the game. I think it's very, very high
Great
quality.
style, like good combat.
Yes.
Like it's really good.
Great. Even the voice acting, the
Voice
characters are
acting's great.
good. It's got
Hmm.
a decent story. I like the little twist that they do in the beginning. I like that. Um,
There's more twists
level
as you get
design's
into it.
good. Yeah. Level design is good. It's very difficult. I think for me it's really, really difficult because for me personally, because I struggle with having to do multiple things in
Yeah.
my mind and then translating them to the controller. So
Yeah.
while my brain might go, you have to jump, dash, grab wall, jump wall, wall's
Yeah.
gonna disappear, dash, blah. why
But
my
make sure
brain
you
might be doing.
crystallize earlier. That way you can crystallize back to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
All that stuff gets really confusing. So in the beginning, they still had a lot of confusing stuff, but it gets even more confusing as you play it. And I'm like, dude, this is brain overload for me, especially since everything is timed. Like you have to do it fast. Like
Yeah.
there was a trial that I did. Like I think there are 4 trials to unlock a door.
Yes.
You probably know what I'm talking about,
Yep.
and some of them were super easy, but there was like one of them that I was stuck on forever. 'Cause I was like, this is
Is it the
so
one where you have to get a
freaking
trap door to
annoying.
open and go up and jump up? It's the trap door one. That one's
No,
tough.
that one I think was the easy one.
Oh,
I think it
okay.
was the
Okay.
one before it. There's
Okay.
one that was just so infuriating. I had to watch a video and I was like, oh, okay. And even when I saw what he did, it took me a little while to be able to actually
Yeah.
do what he did.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely a game for me personally where I'm like, I get the hook. It is quality, and I think at some point I'll go back and beat it just because of how far I got into it. If
I've
I
got
would have quit
lots of
like
games like that too. I get it.
a third and before, I would just tell you I'm done with it. I'm not going back. But the fact that I kept going, I think I'll play it.
Yep.
But
Yes, that's the main one that I finished.
all right, I'll just we're at time pretty much. I wanted to keep the show anywhere between an hour and a half, but I always want to end it on letting people talk about anything they completed, especially guests. The only thing I'll say is I did finish recently Yakuza Like a Dragon,
Hmm.
um, which that game launched when the Xbox Series X launched. I remember
Yeah.
buying it and playing it for a little bit and being doing that same thing I always do when I play a Yakuza game. It's got a nice hook, I like the story. And then it's like, well, Derek,
And you
did you keep
stop.
playing it? Nope. I've only beaten one Yakuza game. I think it was Yakuza 3. I did start it and go all the way through that, and that's when was like, I'm gonna be a Yakuza fan, and I kept buying all the Yakuza games and not playing them. So, anyways, point is I was really interested in Infinite Wealth, but that is a game where I know you could be like, well, just watch the story recap, but I was like, I don't want to watch the story
I
recap.
want to play it.
I want to play this
Yeah,
one,
I get
and
it.
I am so glad I did because I think if you do the story recap, the story, first of all, is
Okay.
completely insane.
All right.
It's absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just doing a story recap kind of doesn't do the game justice because the fun of the game, besides the combat being actually legit really good, is the craziness, the zaniness, the weird characters, the weird dialogue, the stupid stuff they do. Like all that stuff cannot be captured in, hey, this guy betrayed this guy, so you got to
Right.
kill this guy, and this is what the Yakuza is doing. But that's not going to be in a summary. So I ended up really liking this game. I gave it a 9 out of 10. It does have some ending, like boss fights that are like, whoa, bro. I've been flying through this entire
Got to go
game
grind for a little bit.
and I played on normal. I don't even think there is an easy, but I played on normal and then I hit some boss fights where it's like, dude, you're like 10 levels above me. And like you said, I had to go grind and I
Yeah.
did. I ended up grinding to where I was for the end boss, I was 15 levels above him and he still beat me 3 times because he kept one-shotting me. I'm like, why is he one-shotting me? What do I do? I don't understand. And then I found out how do you prevent him from one-shotting you, and then I was able to beat him. But great
Yeah.
experience, great game. I'm definitely gonna play Yakuza Like a Dragon, or I guess it's just called Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. That one actually looks more fun, and I just
Hmm.
gave this one a 9 out of 10. So good game.
Then you have
Highly
Kyle on,
recommend it.
and you guys go deep on that one.
Well, Kyle,
Kyle, we need you.
about it. Kyle, it's good talking to you about Yakuza. Uh, yeah, we'll have him on, especially when I start playing Infinite Wealth more. But yeah, that's our show. So that's what this show is going to be all about. We're going to talk games. We're going to deep dive them, and it's going to be new and old. If you're playing some old, we'll talk about it. So that's it. That's a wrap. Goodbye.